Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jack Douglas with another armchair vacation in America. Just north of this fun-loving city, two of America's mightiest rivers meet and merge as one, the Mississippi from the north and the Missouri from the west. This giant metropolis has so much variety to offer the vacationer that many have called it the San Francisco of the border states. From polar bears to First Division baseball, from showboats to sultry entertainment, we can run the gamut of fun and relaxation in St. Louis, Missouri, the Twin River Titan. The French king, Louis XV, had the honor of being the patron saint of the trading post which, in later years, became known as St. Louis. The man who founded the city was a French trapper, Pierre Liguest, and if he looked like this in real life, he must have cut a dashing figure with the ladies. This stone monument commemorates the landing of Pierre Liguest and his fur-trading companions, the year 1764. That's the Mississippi in the background. The old Courthouse Building at Broadway and Market Streets will forever be remembered in American history. Here was tried the famous Dred Scott case. Nearby on the riverfront, we saw the nearly completed Gateway Arch, a majestic man-made monument of gleaming steel. Now, by the time you see this film, it will probably have been finished, and it will look like this. America's tallest monument, rising 630 feet skyward. That's 75 feet higher than the Washington Monument and 180 feet higher than the Great Pyramid in Egypt. This arch of shiny steel is dedicated to the opening of the West after the Louisiana Purchase. While you're at the riverfront, you'll be intrigued by this massive riverboat, which bills itself as the world's most modern riverboat. Well, the SS Admiral is that and more. She cruises the section of the Mississippi which serves as the boundary between St. Louis and the state of Illinois. And now hear this. You leave the dock at 10:30 a.m., return at 3:30 p.m. A 5-hour cruise for $1.25. And that old-fashioned humding and calliope music is tossed in as an extra. On this particular excursion, a heartwarming scene was taking place. This attractive young woman is Adrienne Bryan, the wife of film star David Bryan. She was in St. Louis in behalf of WAIF, the World Adoption Fund. And all of these children are waifs who were her guests on this unforgettable outing. What a thrill it must have been for these international waifs. What a nice gesture by this wonderful gal. She's an American, and that tells it all. The vacationing baseball fan doesn't need a map or a tourist guide to find Busch Stadium. That's a fact. We arrived early to watch batting and fielding practice by the St. Louis Cardinals, a twilight game between the Cards and the Houston Astros. An hour later, the stands began to fill up, and a fine ball game it was. But frankly, we missed the greatest Cardinal of them all, Stan the Man Musial. But you'd be surprised at how many people come here to Busch Stadium simply because Stan the Man played here, and the memory lingers on. They call this Forest Park, and it's well named. A veritable forest of trees hides from view some of the finest tourist attractions ever assembled by a single city, all in this one park. We're going to start with the St. Louis Art Museum, one of the best in the world, and here, walking among these old and treasured columns, also called capitals, are Charles Buckley, the museum director, and Emily Rao, the curator.
You know, Jack, these capitals that we were talking about are among thousands of art objects, paintings, sculpture, and decorative art housed in this museum. And I should say that this museum is one of the major museums in the United States. And the people of St. Louis enjoy it and make use of it and have a good time here and learn here. And last year, there were nearly 500,000 people who came through our doors. Not only St. Louisans, people come from Cleveland, from the South, from farther west, from Europe. We have many visitors. But now I'd like to take you on a tour and show you a few of the highlights that are here in the collection. Works of art that Miss Rao and I find especially interesting, and so do our visitors. What would you name first, Miss Rao?
Well, I think in the Oriental section, the panda bear, an ancient Chinese bronze bear that has been gilded, is one of the most fascinating objects.
And if we were to go along, let's say to the 14th century and come to Western Europe, and particularly to France, I would mention the St. Louis of Toulouse, that large limestone sculpture. And perhaps the most recent modern picture we have acquired is a very strong and colorful and rather, I say, dramatic work by Victor de Vasarely, the French artist.
It's not only dramatic, but very subtle, too.
You know, this has been all too brief a tour of a museum as large as this one. But we hope that the next time you come to St. Louis, you will plan to spend more time at the City Art Museum. Enjoy having you.
All right, we're still in Forest Park, and our next stop is the Jewel Box there in the background. A climate-controlled floral garden is about the best way to describe it. But if your youngsters are with you, chances are that you won't have too much time to admire the flowers and the fountains. They'll be dragging you on to another Forest Park highlight, the St. Louis Zoological Park, or just plain zoo. On the other hand, this is far from just an ordinary zoo, as we shall soon see. For one thing, they have the whitest polar bears that I've ever seen. Not gray white, but I mean laundry white. And the proud keeper of these Arctic creatures is Mr. Howard Hoffman, who told us that polar bears are not the easiest of animals to train. However, they catch on quickly if they know food is on the way, generally a chunk of bread. There seemed to be a bit of excitement over at the children's zoo, so we sauntered over to see this little rascal chewing at the keeper's trousers, an expensive way to entertain the customers. Anyway, this isn't a dog, but a baby wolf. And at this age, the wolf does react like a puppy dog. And look at these awestruck faces and the hands that reach out to tenderly pet the wolf. Well, a few months from now, fully grown, the same wolf would frighten most of these children. Aquatic House is where the zoo has set up permanent residence for Siegfried, an 1,800-pound walrus. The keeper, Val Jones, slaps the edge of the pool, and that's the signal for Siegfried to come closer, to be petted or fed. Incidentally, feeding old Sig is quite an item. The walrus consumes 70 to 100 pounds of fish every day. The St. Louis Zoo claims it has the friendliest animals of any zoo in the country. To prove the point, the zoo encourages even children to feed many of the animals, such as Jeep the giraffe, one of the tallest giraffes in captivity. Carrots are Jeep's favorite enticements. He'll nibble them from your hand, being careful not to touch your fingers, and notice how gingerly he reaches for this carrot from keeper David Scanlon. Well, we're still in Forest Park. What a place. And this building with the gaily colored flags is the Municipal Opera, or the Muny Opera as it's known to the natives. The Muny is the home of outdoor theater at its best, and during a rehearsal break, we were welcomed by a comedian we've laughed at and with in many a Hollywood movie. I'm sure you'll recognize Miss Mary Wicks.
Hello, Jack. Welcome to the St. Louis Municipal Opera. Isn't it lovely? You know, we're awfully proud of it here in St. Louis. I'm a St. Louis girl, born, bred, went to college here, and I wish everybody I know could come from St. Louis just so they could have a homecoming. St. Louis people are the most wonderful, warm people in the whole world. I just love to come back here, particularly here to the opera, which I hope you know is the granddaddy of all of the outdoor musical operas. It was started 47 years ago. This is its 47th season. How about that? Isn't it lovely? And the proscenium arch on the stage is wider than Radio City Music Hall. Those two beautiful old oak trees you see on either side of the stage are over 200 years old. They're fed intravenously. We couldn't bear it if anything happened to them. And the productions here are absolutely divine. 100% professional, beautiful lighting, beautiful sound on a full moon night with that 50-piece orchestra in the pit. It's to die. And an awful lot of people, you know, I'm sure, have had their start here. There was Irene Dunn years ago, spent a whole season here when she was just starting out. A gentleman named Archie Leach. Now, you may know him as Cary Grant. He played here for several seasons, was awfully good. The ladies loved him. Dred Scott, long before he was famous nationally, played here at the St. Louis Municipal Opera. We're mighty proud of that. The theater seats, I better tell you, 12,000 people. But if you don't have the price of a ticket, there are 1,200 free seats. Isn't that interesting? Right back here. And they're wonderful. You can see and hear just as well as down in the boxes. People come here 5 in the afternoon, bring their picnic lunches, have their dinner, and then see the wonderful show, get in their cars, and go home. And the theater is right in the middle of Forest Park, which is the largest park in St. Louis, and right in the center of the city. So you don't have to drive way out in the county to get here. See, what else should I tell you? The productions range, we've done everything here from Student Prince to My Fair Lady, Showboat, wonderful shows. And people have great favorites. They demand to see Student Prince every 4th or 5th year, have to see it, have to hear that wonderful music. It really is one of the most exciting places, I think, in our country.
Miss Wicks, rehearsal.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jack. I have to go back to rehearsal. Wouldn't you know? The play we're doing is Meet Me in St. Louis. Bye.
All right, Mary, thank you. But we'll never say St. Louis in St. Louis. The Twin River Titan. This is Market Street in downtown St. Louis. The street is enhanced by the beauty of the Carl Millis fountain and statuary, The Meeting of the Waters, referring, of course, to the merging of the Mississippi and Missouri rivers a few miles north of the city. On Olive Street, which is considered the main street of St. Louis, an office building now occupies the site of the house where William Clark of the Lewis and Clark expedition lived and died. And this house, a very fashionable residence when it was built in 1845, was the birthplace of a beloved American poet whose name is known to parents and children around the globe. Eugene Field, the author of The Gingham Dog and the Calico Cat, of Winkin', Blinkin' and Nod, and the classic poem that can easily bring tears to the eyes when read or recited, of course, Little Boy Blue. Little boys and girls, say between the ages of 3 and 83, will simply go wild over a truly different kind of museum, the National Museum of Transport. Here on open exhibit are transportation relics dating back to 1870. Relics, yes, but the excitement which each vehicle generated in its heyday is still here. There are more than 50 locomotives at the NMT and hundreds of trolleys, horse cars, motor buses, and other forms of transportation conveyors. Now, at the present time, the museum is located in Forest Park, but it's bursting at the seams. There's hardly any walking room for the visitors. However, we're happy to report that very soon, the NMT will move to a 40-acre tract across the Mississippi River. No, son, it's not for sale, not even to Santa Claus. Across the Mississippi, a few miles from St. Louis and actually in Illinois, is the shrine of Our Lady of the Snows. This Catholic shrine is named after Rome's historic church, and some 200 acres overlooking the Mississippi Valley are being developed as a permanent shrine to the Blessed Virgin who, according to Catholic belief, caused snow to fall in the city of Rome in the year 352 A.D. Now, it will be many years before the shrine project is completed, but even now there is much to see and admire here, and I might add that people of all faiths are made welcome. This is the main house of the Busch estate. The house, of course, is private, but not all of the huge grounds. A miniature train rolls through some 280 acres of the estate, known as Grant's Farm, because Ulysses S. Grant, the farmer who became a great general, built this log house here in 1855. It has been preserved as an historical shrine. For the youngsters, there are replicas of stagecoaches, ideal for picture-taking by Mom, and a variety of wildlife, including quite a few bison. They can be dangerous only if you're on foot. Another attraction at Grant's Farm is the bird show, actually trained macaws. Leaving the estate, you'll notice this fence, one of the most unusual in the world because the uprights are made of 2,500 rifle barrels from the war between the states. Now, this is the entrance to the Missouri Botanical Garden, established in 1858. That impressive structure, however, is as new as tomorrow. The climatron, a word coined to emphasize its climate control facilities. The dome-shaped climatron is made of aluminum tubing lined with a layer of transparent plexiglass. The climatron has a ground surface of 23,000 square feet, almost all of it used as a display research greenhouse for more than 1,000 varieties of tropical plants and flowers. Our tour of the garden was guided by Ms. Donna Koch. The climatron is only a small, though colorful part of the Missouri Botanical Garden. There are 70 additional acres of gardens, tree trails, and horticultural displays. Another well-known local landmark is the Bevo Mill, a fine restaurant specializing in German food. It's been a St. Louis favorite for more than 35 years. The Cheshire Lodge and Inn is one of the many highly recommended places to stay or dine. This handsome limousine will pick you up at the airport, and after you've unpacked, chances are you'll make a beeline for the Cheshire Inn, a strong flavoring of merry old England in St. Louis. Most of the antique wall pieces and furnishings are authentic. A few are reproductions. The food is excellent, the service is first-rate, and the tariff is quite reasonable. A full dinner, for example, will run from $2.50 to $5.50. That was the top price while we were here for the best dinner on the menu. St. Louis, by the way, is not an expensive place to visit, an important consideration for a family vacationing on a limited budget. These patrons are Miss Delcia Bailey and Miss Mary Kay Hayes. Well, after dinner, you can board this typical London two-decker for a trip to town. A nice touch and a nice way to start an evening in St. Louis. The Twin River Titan. This is Gaslight Square, St. Louis's answer to Bourbon Street in New Orleans and Greenwich Village in New York. With its dozens of nightclubs, theaters, restaurants, and shops, it's the nightlife center of St. Louis. We stopped at the Crystal Palace, where our producer, George Flournoy, on the right, discussed Gaslight Square with Mr. Charlie Wells, owner of the palace.
Well, that's probably the secret of the success of the area, as the diversification of the places, all compressed within this one block or block and a half area.
Yeah, and then the way you've decorated your own place fascinates me. Where did you get these wonderful old stained glass
Well, at one
windows?
time, it was very fashionable for the homes to have this type of window, the stained glass window. And of course, when they started tearing down a lot of the old mansions around the city, why, we wound up with a truckload of stained glass windows. Of course, I know you noticed our chandelier as we came in.
Beautiful.
That's a fabulous chandelier that it probably weighs a ton, and it's very, very priceless. Our decor here, by the way, is early junk.
Well, Charlie, one thing that interests me is the fact that a tourist can come here, park his car in your parking lot, and right here on the square find an entire evening's entertainment.
That's very true. No matter what where his taste may lie, he'll find the answer to it here, find something to please him in the way of, for example, in food. If he likes Italian food, he can go to the Bella Rosa. If he likes French cuisine, the Three Fountains is a very elegant, fancy restaurant on the corner. Japanese food, we have the Kotobuki, we have the Port of St. Louis. We have a very fine Greek restaurant called Smokey Joe's Grecian Terrace. They have the shish kebab, the grape leaves, and all the Greek specialties.
Well, Charlie, of course, right here in your own place, the Crystal Palace, you have Egyptian dancers in one room and a great show from the Bahamas in the other.
We hope it makes a very exciting evening for people who come to the Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I looked out the window a couple of minutes ago. You have a lot of variety across the street, I noticed.
True. There's a brand new spot just opened directly across from us. It's called the Gilded Cage, and they're featuring the discotheque dancing and the go-go girls, which is very much the rage now around the country, I understand. And I know that there's at least 4 places on Gaslight Square that are featuring that particular type of entertainment right now.
And didn't you tell me there's a place where opera singers actually drop in and sing?
True, that's very true. It happens at 2 different places, as a matter of fact. There's one place up the street on the corner called the Lorelei, and on the other side of us, just down the street, is a place called Marty's. Now, Marty's is known as the singer's rendezvous. Marty sings, he's on television, has a show of his own, a local show. The waitresses sing, the bartender sings. I think even the porter comes in on his day off and does a little bit of singing.
P.S. The girl in this duet with Marty is one of his waitresses.
In this world, you are all that
Well, Charlie, let's say I've had a great evening on the square. Now, what's the ideal way to finish it up?
Well, there's 2 ways that people usually choose to end the evening. They either go to Pino's Pizza Parlor and have a big slice of mushroom pizza, or they go to Jack Carl's 2 Cents Plain, which is just across the street, and they wind up with a great big pastrami sandwich and free sauerkraut.
Free sauerkraut. Charlie, you just sold me. Let's go.
Very good.
Okay?
Nice.
Next week, more faces and places somewhere in America. Until then, this is Jack Douglas saying thank you so much and good night, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.